Do you remember that scene from The Matrix in which Morpheus offers Neo the choice between two pills, one red, the other blue? He told Neo that if he chose the blue pill, he'd wake up in bed as if nothing had ever happened. But if he chose the red pill, Morpheus warned, you stay in Wonderland and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Today, dear traveler, is your red pill moment. Welcome to the Wild Garden of Enlightenment course on awakening. We are all travelers here, aren't we? In the great contradiction of time and space, eternal beings of radiant light, yet fixated upon the strange sights and sounds and the drifting rhythm of time. Today's idea is going to be one that some of you may find difficult to believe. In our lives as human beings, as we go on through the years, trying our best to get by, at some point, quite a few of us come across this feeling, this sense that we are minds, or perhaps we could say spirits, trapped inside these physical forms. This is not an unusual insight. In fact, quite a few people who are not spiritual or religious at all, at some point or another, start to begin to consider this possibility and get this sort of feeling. In fact, there is a funny old story about a well-known atheist comedian named W.C. Fields, and I believe he was most popular in perhaps the early 20th century, if I'm not mistaken. And W.C. Fields had a very particular way of speaking. He would talk with this sort of almost drunken lisp. He would say things like, yeah, see? And then he'd have some poignant, funny line that would follow that. And in one case, it seems that as W.C. Fields was aging, his health began to fail, and he found himself in and out of the hospital quite a bit. And I should say that W.C. Fields was a very well-known atheist, and but at some point in an event, he was in the hospital kind of towards the end of his life, and a friend of his came to visit and found W.C. laid up in bed reading the Bible. And his friend says, W.C., what are you doing? You're not religious. What are you doing reading the Bible? And W.C. looked up and says, yeah, see, I'm just looking for loopholes. And so the journey through life can whittle away at a lot of our resistance to at least hoping we've been wrong about what we are as just physical beings. And so we may begin by thinking maybe we are spiritual beings and we're just trapped in this physical perspective. Now, we can expand on that idea, and many people do from that point on, and they start thinking, well, okay, the body does seem to be a cage, but isn't the world itself as well sort of a broader prison? Because I can take this cage and I can move it about, at least within the world's boundaries. And I should be a little bit more clear here and say, I'm not just speaking of the terrain of the planet exclusively. I'm speaking of something more in line with space itself, right? Space, as human beings experience it, is three-dimensional. Make this really simple for our overworked human brains. As human beings, of course, we can move forward and backwards. We can move side to side. we can move up and down. And that really is the range of physical space as far as human beings experience it. Of course, you might say, well, we could move diagonally, and this is true, but really to move diagonally is just to move in at least two of those dimensions at the same time. You might even be able to move in three dimensions out all at once. You know, if you were like an acrobat maybe, or involved in a plane crash, or perhaps you were just heavily intoxicated and you managed to move in three dimensions all at the same time. Of course, there's also the fourth dimension known as time. Time is a central teaching for many spiritual students. It's something that we all need to consider deeply, because the dimension of time that matters most to us, as it turns out, isn't a dimension at all. It is simply presence. That's not today's lesson, so I'm not going to dive too deep in that. It's just a footnote for this conversation today. And so we feel we are stuck in this model of life. And we truly do believe that this is all we have access to, these four dimensions. And our entire world and our society is built upon this notion of four-dimensional space and time. And this is the great hoax of our lives. And that is exactly what we're going to explore in today's episode. Do you remember that scene from The Matrix in which Morpheus offers Neo the choice between two pills, one red, the other blue? He told Neo that if he chose the blue pill, he'd wake up in bed as if nothing had ever happened. But if he chose the red pill, Morpheus warned, you stay in Wonderland and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Today, dear traveler, is your red pill moment. The world has a purpose, just as the body does. Yet the purpose of both is not what we presume it to be. Through all our days of wandering the realm of four dimensions, there are secrets of great significance that remain completely hidden from view. One of those things is a mantra we've been silently chanting every day of our lives, though most of us remain completely unaware of doing so. Nevertheless, it is the universal song of every living soul, in which we beg of life to settle one all-important matter for us. What will bring my spirit to a state of deep satisfaction, purpose, and meaning? What will give me peace, happiness, and be still my endless restlessness? To wit, what is this life, and what is my purpose within it? At first glance, perhaps these seem like separate inquiries, but they all trace their roots to one primary urge, the need each one of us feels to know who we really are. Although it is true this ancient search does appear in countless divergent forms around each bend of the road in the journey through our lifetimes, it is really our own self, face to face, whom we hope to at last encounter and come to know. For our purposes, let us call this the master question of life. Let us tighten it up a bit to, very simply, what am I? Every human being longs to resolve the puzzle of their self. And this is true even of those who remain oblivious to the question their hearts are constantly singing. Unconscious or not, the question drives our every action and flavors our every thought. No matter where we go and whatever we may do, our lives, relationships, goals and achievements, our losses and revelations, our dysfunctions and tribulations, all orbit around this one nagging itch, which is hidden in the shadows of an altogether different dimension. The urge to know thyself represents the gravity of our entire lives, and until we come to know it by going directly into its expression as what we in fact are, we'll always be haunted by an aching hollowness and a sense of loss so devastating we must keep our gaze forever turned away, stuck in the narrow confines of our tiny little cell. This leads us to secret number 2 of the great hoax of the world: that you are a being of 4 dimensions only. This is your home, your life, and there is nothing else. All of our senses appear to witness to this quote-unquote fact. Our hands tell us of the world's impenetrability. Our eyes cannot see beyond it. Our ears register only the sounds it makes, and our feet cannot carry us beyond the world's own pathways. And so we adjust and blindly feel our way through our lives. No one seems to have any real direct evidence about what lies beyond the narrow, 4-dimensional band of the sensory world. This leaves us to do what is only natural. We make things up. Here we arrive at secret number 3. The human story of the world and our lives within it has been devised and revised again and again over many thousands of years, with every age and culture adding a new chapter, a different texture, but all wobbling atop the primary error of our 4-dimensional immersion. If you will only stop to consider that what we believe about the world is only what the world itself has told us, you may catch a whiff of the real problem here. Try to imagine the day you were born. As a baby, you knew nothing about the world, where you had come from, or what this strange perception was. You had to rely on your parents, siblings, friends, teachers, theologians, the media, and society at large to begin forming some sense of self, the world, and what it all must mean. But where, we might ask, did all these people get their information from? Well, from their own parents, of course, and siblings, friends, books, and so on and so forth. Same as you. There's an old joke about this young priest who's volunteering at the scriptorium, which is where they copy old texts by hand. After a few days, he notices that everyone is copying other copies of the scriptures, not the originals. Alarmed, he points this out to the head priest. What if someone makes a mistake? We might end up copying the error forever. Now, the head priest realizes the new guy's absolutely right, so he heads down to the cellar where the original manuscripts are housed. Hours go by, then days, until finally the young priest starts to worry. He goes to see what's happening, where he finds the head priest clutching an old, dusty text. "Father, are you all right?" he asks. The elder priest points to a spot in the book he's holding, looks up and says, "The word was celebrate." What a dreadful mistake for these poor celibate men. The point is, in our grander context, whatever the real nature of the world may be, we must consult the original scripture if we hope to gain legitimate, unbiased insight into its true nature, which in this case is not a written text at all, of course, but rather direct experience of the awakened mind. In last week's Dharma, I described an experience I had beyond the four-dimensional walled prison of human perception. If I were to wrap up the insight in blatant terms, when I slipped beyond the world of form for a moment, and then consciously witnessed it all take shape again, I realized it had, in effect, reappeared only within my own mind. This is extraordinarily difficult to explain, and even harder to conceive. But in essence, my body and the world both took shape within the womb, so to speak, of the stillness itself. I observed that the manifestation of the external body and world bloom inwardly, and there enwrap us in a sort of cocoon, which blocks our awareness of the beautiful infinite expression of our own natural state, the inner vastness of totality itself. In the life of the body that follows, we lose track of both what we are and where we are, and the four-dimensional domain becomes our only conscious experience. What the world is, beneath all its seeming solidity, is but an idea, a way of seeing. It is a point of view, which we collectively build and reinforce as we go along. As a closed system, we cannot ask the world to reveal its true nature, for concealing unbroken totality is precisely what it does. Some mystics have sought to understand the nature of the veil, looking in many directions and through innumerable lenses, but the world, the body, and the ego itself are that veil. If we hope to discover the hatch to true self-discovery, we must allow the master question to direct our way. That question, what am I, can only be resolved through close, undivided investigation of the self. Undivided means we cannot water down our approach with future anticipatory or past reflection, which are aspects of temporal diversion. They shift attention into the dimension of time automatically. Likewise, while movement through the three dimensions of space does not necessarily demand physical stillness, our inner state must be brought into alignment with its own still center. Through this shift, we attain direct realization that the three dimensions of space-time present only one level of experience, while the dimension of totality is fundamentally different. In fact, it has no dimensional properties at all, encompassing everything. While this may sound quite incomprehensible, what it in fact implies is that realization is not beyond our own inherent being. The journey of awakening, then, is best understood as an inner shift into presence and the immediate realization of pure, undivided awareness. Rather than trying to conceive what this all must mean, it is perhaps easier to simply intuitively adjust your center from an externalized focus to what is commonly referred to as the here and now. This is the real gateway to internal alignment and presence. As you turn steadily within, in silence and in stillness, the boundaries of the body's form begin to soften until they become so thin and so delicate they are like a conceptual membrane through which an altogether new experience shimmers into view. And now I'd like to give you a few thoughts to reflect on over the next week. First of all, try to get a feel for The way the story of the world and the four-dimensional limitations of the world are reflected throughout our society. Pay careful attention to how other people talk, to the things that they express, to their beliefs, to the implications of those beliefs. You'll also hear it reflected through a lot of the media, through the things that you watch on TV, the things that you read. So the exercise here is just really about becoming conscious and seeing how the story of the world is continuously reinforced from many angles. And this is an ongoing process that truly has no end. Secondly, pay attention to how your own thoughts, your own behavior, and the things you say also reflect all of those beliefs and limitations. The idea that we live in this three-dimensional space and in the fourth dimension of time, and how this belief really shapes everything we believe. It also shapes the way we react to other people and our entire relationships with everybody, including our own self. Become present and aware of the words that are constantly passing through your mind and what that internal voice is really saying, as well as how that internal voice makes you feel. What is the emotional state that is generated from this continuous stream of inner dialogue? How does it shape your life, and how does it make you feel? Finally, take some time to become centered and present. See if you can get a feel for that other dimension, that hidden space, and observe how when you do become in line with that and connected with that, how that makes you feel. Now you should have two different models for which you could express your life and live your life. One in a state of continuous thought, continuous activities, all centered on go, 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 do, think, think, think. This is the one we're most familiar with, no doubt. And then the other, the one of being centered and more quiet and more at peace. Compare these two and try to become very clear on exactly what those feelings are that each state generates within you. Before we wrap up, if today's reflection resonated with you, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing the course with others. It's a simple way to keep this work free and accessible while helping these teachings find those who need them most. Thank you for being a part of this growth. Now, let's close out. Next time on the Wild Garden of Enlightenment, we're going to explore the dance of words. Words so often can be used to conflict with presence, or they can be used to bridge gaps, to express love, and, most importantly, perhaps, to point us directly into presence. So there are some great and powerful lessons we can take from the exploration of simple words, language, something that most of us take for granted, but which in fact shape our entire experience of life. Until next time, vaya con Dios, step by step, with peace and with presence. Thank you for joining me.